What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to lesson number 52 for A Course in Creativity, Ephemera's Greatest Hits. So this is inspired by A Course in Miracles Workbook lesson 52, which is based on the idea of this willingness to let go. So it too is a review lesson with multiple lessons contained therein. Now, this for me is about not just a willingness to see differently. What makes it possible? It's a willingness to let go. It's a willingness to let go of what we've known. It's a willingness to release. Right. So, and there are many ways that we can do this. I laugh because it's like, it's just release. It's fine. It's surrender. No big deal. It's super easy peasy, right? I'm kidding. There are tons of ways to do this. There are tons of ways to go about it. But here I just wanted to address the correlation between the willingness to see differently isn't just about, choosing to bring in something new. There has to be a space inside that can be filled by something new, but that has to be first undertaken through letting go of something else. So this willingness to see things differently can just dissolve the contents of that container because we welcome in a new perspective. We don't have to have the new thing yet. We don't have to have the new way of seeing things, the new perspective, situations. We don't have to have them all right now because they all exist right now regardless. All we're doing is allowing the external circumstances to line up with what we know to be true. When we're changing beliefs, it feels kind of awkward, right? It can feel kind of like sandpaper. It can feel a little bit like sandpaper, like you're trying to snuggle with sandpaper. There's a visual for you, but that can be what it feels like, where it's really hard to grasp and it just feels prickly. So something that it's taken me a long time to learn about release is that the terms by which you define it and make it accessible to you. Now, this is really important, is making it accessible to you. How is release something that you can participate in? Or is it something that you do through certain circumstances alone, like crisis, or, like you don't require crisis to change, right? You don't require chaos to change. This was the lesson of my 20s. You don't need those things. That's not how change has to happen. Sometimes it can happen quietly. Sometimes it does happen through a lot of noise, but other times very subtly, it starts to come through an anchor. So if that's the case, then what are the terms that you've set for it, right? Do you require a lot of noise or hardship to know that change can take place, to know that something old can leave your life, to know that something like an old habit, thought, or pattern can change, right? So are those terms accessible to you with ease? Because that also is the flip side of this. If we were to reverse engineer the entry point of what would be new coming in, do you need hardship in order to let the old fall away? Because if that's the case, you will equally require that same catalytic force to come in. You will require that same catalytic energy to crystallize the new in reality for you, because it's not so much that that's how the stuff arrives. It's the energy that you resonate with internally that helps you to recognize external circumstances that match. The good would be the entry point. Something bad had to happen in order for the good to even be there. So this also speaks to the ways that we've been acclimated to peace. If we're acclimated to that peace and that softness and that tenderness in our lives, then we will so too be acclimated to the peaceful entry of something really good. Do we need a tower to change? Sometimes it makes it easier because then we don't have to justify anything that we do, right? We don't have to say, this is just where my boundaries are. When we think about these things, we require tower moments, as they're called in tarot? Like, do we require tower moments to change and transform? Because then we can't abandon ourselves anymore. We can't use these excuses that we used to before, because now we can just say, well, that's actually really bad for my health and I can't do it. But if in the absence of those tower moments and those do or die moments, then what are our boundaries? How do we justify our boundaries? Can you just say, I don't really like that. That doesn't feel good to me. And do you have people in your life, and have you created relationships where you also do this, and it's like a reciprocal thing, right? Where you do this and it's not transactional, reciprocal, where you treat others as though their boundaries matter fundamentally. And if someone says, well, I don't really feel like doing that, it's not taken personally. It doesn't become a bigger thing because you're steady in your energy, right? So do you have relationships in your life where that's the case? Do you have energies in your life where that energy can be true for you? And that's what a lot of health things can do for us, is they they give us reasons to not abandon ourselves. And I think about this willingness to let go in the same way, right? This willingness to let go is a willingness to see things differently. Yes, but have you created the conditions for the maintenance of the new thing that will be coming in? Have you created the conditions that that can thrive without the things that you might have needed before, like, disorder or chaos or troubles or challenges, right? Because we can get into this place, and, culturally, we've romanticized drama. We've romanticized the drama. One of the things that I love to do when I go to my granny's house is watch the Hallmark movies with her. Super cheesy, so ridiculous, but every single one of them has this crescendo moment where they have to decide, will I go back to the city, and it's just so, it's funny to me, and we joke about it, and she and I both take jabs at because it is kind of funny, but it's one of those things where we replicate these things, right? It's like the hero's journey, that story arc in narrative, where we sometimes need the absence of something to understand the presence of something, but the degree of upheaval and drama that goes with it. Have you made space in your life for the peaceful arrival of something amazing? Have you considered that it's a possibility that something can shift and change without you needing to go through this transformation that feels like cuddling with sandpaper? I know that would feel awful, like just all of it. But that's kind of what we do, right? We create, and that's what we do with beliefs too. Because if you believe that you're not deserving or worthy of peace, then you will be cuddling with sandpaper covered stuffed animals for the rest of your life in some way, until you change it. It's not a forever thing. It's not like a proposition where you have no choice. This is about how this willingness to see things differently. The flip side of it is the willingness to let go easily, the willingness to believe that the unofficial rules that you create for letting go also dictate the terms by which you connect to others too, right? These are like the mechanics of allowing. This is how it happens, and how this kind of lets you peek under the hood of your own process. This is where you begin to see your relationship to flow itself. Before you can understand why you're stuck somewhere or in something or some belief, you have to understand how things flow to you and why. What is controlling the flow? Those beliefs need to be explored too. And that's part of this Course in Creativity lesson. We're looking at the willingness to see things differently, yes, but also the willingness to let go is part of that. Because when you see things differently, something shifts. So if we're looking at the energetics of it, it's about looking at the flow. Like, where are things where's the flow clogged, where it doesn't get through? Not because of specific beliefs necessarily, that is part of it. But one of the things that I've understood and seen in many, many of my friends and elsewhere is just that you begin to see the conditions you place on receiving. You see that. How comfortable are you with receiving? How comfortable are you with receiving compliments? How comfortable are you with getting without needing to give back right away? Or deflecting compliments, right? People saying, "Oh, that looks so nice." You're like, "Oh, thank you. I got it at Costco for blah, blah, blah." Like, it just, slow your roll for a second. Take in the compliment. Take in the good, right? Those moments illuminate whether you feel an ease with receiving. And if you're unable to observe yourself for a day, which I highly recommend, create a spark, there you go. But when you're unable to observe this dynamic, we can get kind of frustrated because when we realize we're stuck, it's almost like it's like beyond the point. It's like by the time you realize that you have a cold, you've already had the cold in your system for a while, right? So that's the same idea here, where it's like you're trying to figure out the energetics of something, of being stuck, of feeling blah, but then it's already been there. It's already there. It's already so very there. And this is how you can kind of see the flow. And for me, the energetic flow is important because it's where you begin to see everything else. It's almost like opening the door to your energy system and seeing how that's been working, seeing how that has been operating in your favor or not, and how we construct this as either, detrimental to our energy or as life-giving, right? Life-giving, because it is life-giving when things flow easily, when we connect easily, and when we see how we get in our own way. But it starts with the willingness to let go, to release control, which, trust me, I get it. Sometimes there's a safety in that. There's a safety in that because it's not about controlling people. It's about understanding circumstances to make yourself feel safe. It's about understanding what's happening so that you can feel secure, so that you don't have to face worries or anxieties, so that you can understand that you can, how you can show up. And if you're kind of bound in these ways where you restrict yourself, and like we mentioned in the last lesson, where your truths are not fully articulated in the world, you will probably have reactions to things around you that speak to this need to control something. Everything around us is temporary. It's all ephemera, right? Ephemera's greatest hits. This plant, this guitar, this bookshelf, all of it. It's all old news. It's all temporary. It's all in motion. It's all in motion, very still in this room. But I will tell you that through time, I've given away so many books that I've taken in, that I've brought in, probably more than I should admit to anyone, but, reading them and then donating them, reading them and then giving them away to people, temporary stuff. That's like a lot of our lives. It's this temporary motion, this motion that is, and that's not to say non-committal energy. This is to talk about the ways that ephemera can clog us up when it comes to our capacity to be willing to see things differently, to be willing to let go. So what do you release when you begin anew? What do you welcome in when you begin anew? This isn't just abstract ideas thinking about manifestation. That is part of it, but the energetics of this, right? When you cease to hold on to things so tightly and you allow, this is allowing, right? Allowing, because you're willing to see things differently. You're willing to let something go. You're willing to be outside of the driver's seat of the specifics of how that arrives, right? The specifics of how that arrives. You are no longer abandoning yourself, because you abandon yourself when you get into this place of it having to look or be or feel a specific way. And what we can do is we can anchor into the details of that and say, no, this is how it's happening because this is what I know. This is what's true. This is how it has to be, because you're looking at the past, the ephemera, the stuff that's passing, and you abandon yourself because you forget that it could be better. Number one, you also anchor in what is as opposed to who you are. You anchor in details as opposed to your energy and yourself and the boundaries around you that draw things in. You start to anchor into something that's completely different from healing and helping yourself as well. So when you get into a place of, starting to see things differently, and that perspective shift that is a miracle, right? This perspective shift, when you're in that shifting place, when you are willing to see it differently, you're not just willing to see a thing or details differently. You're also admitting something about yourself to yourself internally. You're admitting something about how big and light and full you are of life, and that magnetizes more things to you, not in the sense of a law of attraction or do this to get this. We're not putting a quarter in the gumball machine. So it's just something to think about here, right? As we summarize this, and I wanted to keep these going, even though I'm introducing some new things little by little to this channel. But I wanted to make sure that I kept these just as little shots of inspiration, keeping true to A Course in Miracles, which has deeply inspired me in my own perspective shifts. So that is your lesson today, though, Ephemera's greatest hits. So if this resonated, please like and subscribe. I'd love to have you on the channel. If you are joining me from the channel, thank you so much for subscribing. I really appreciate it, and you and your time and energy being here. So thank you. And as always, wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, I hope it finds you very, very well, my friends. Take care.